Okay, excellent. Good evening, everyone. So nice to see you. Well, I don't see you. So nice to be here with you this evening. Okay, let's go ahead and dive in. Climate change is a reality in our lives. It manifests in too little water in the form of droughts, too much water or atmospheric rivers flowing through, and the threat of wildfire. We're all living this now. My mission for this talk is to present actions that, when taken, can give us a sense of empowerment and make us feel like we can lessen the impact of climate change on our lives and our properties. Although all three of these consequences of climate change are undeniably pressing, I'm going to talk tonight about water, the absence of it and the overabundance of it. My expertise is water, and in particular, landscape water. Here are the topics we'll be covering: too little water in the form of drought, actions to take to ease the impact of drought, a very short primer on wildfire preparedness, too much water in the form of atmospheric rivers, and actions that we can take to ease the impact of deluge. So first we will address too little water. As a landscape water manager, I track drought and rainfall statistics closely. In this slide, I show the drought patterns from 2001 to 2021. And each of these graphics represents November, the month of November in its respective year. This is from the Drought Monitor website produced by the University of Nebraska-Lincoln. And let me tell you what the color coding represents. White is not dry, yellow is abnormally dry, beige is moderate drought, orange is severe drought, red is extreme drought, and brown is exceptional drought. Now, what I'd like to point out about this is that in only 5 of these 21 years have we not been in some level of drought. And that would be 2005 and 6, 2010 and 11, and 2017. So 5 out of 21 years, that's 76% of the time in this century that we were in drought. And then also, I didn't include 2022 on here because the graphic didn't fit on the slide, but 2022 actually looked just like 2021. So actually, it's 17 out of 22 years, which is 77% of the time. So the purpose of this slide is to prove how pervasive drought is in California, even though the last 3 winters were wet. When we talk about managing our landscapes in drought, the low-hanging fruit of water conservation is lowering the water needs of the landscape. And one option for doing that is to convert our water-guzzling lawns into beautiful gardens with climate-appropriate plants and California natives that use a fraction of the water that lawns require. The water districts are literally paying us to take out our lawns and put in low water plants. And these are screenshots of the 2 major water districts in Contra Costa County. We have East Bay Mud and Contra Costa Water District. And there are a couple of other small water districts in the county, and these are the 2 major ones. And they both have lawn conversion rebate program. And these are screenshots of that. Low water plants require 1/4 the amount of water that lawns require in Northern California. So this lawn represents 1,000 square feet of lawn, And it's 1,000 square feet. Actually, when I stood and took the picture of this lawn, back behind me, it extended for about another 10 feet. So I know that this is 1,000 square feet because it's my mother's side yard and I measured it. So this 1,000 square feet of turf grass requires 25,000 gallons a year to be healthy. So what a difference if we pulled out that lawn and put in low water plants, then this 1,000 square foot area would then require 6,000 gallons a year after the plants are established. So 25,000 gallons a year as opposed to 6,000 gallons a year, that's quite a difference. And I had to, in the right slide, I had to include photos there because it was my mother's yard, and she passed away before we were planning on pulling out the lawn and putting in low water plants, but she passed away, and so we didn't get a chance to do it, but we were definitely planning on it. Now, rainfall is measured in inches, and plant water requirement is measured in inches. Now, this is really convenient for a water manager because what I can do and what I'm doing with this slide, the purpose of the slide is to compare the amount of annual rainfall to the annual amount of water that different plants require. So these blue bars represent the amount of rain that fell each of these years, 2001 to 2022, in Union City, California. Now, I chose Union City. I know it's not in Contra Costa County, but I chose Union City because it was the closest city to Contra Costa County that had rainfall data, that actual rainfall data that went back to 2001. And Union City is very close to Contra Costa County anyway. So let's see, what I'm shooting for here is that to show that rainfall alone, that free water that falls from the sky, can take care of low water plants. So I titled this slide, California is a low water state. So to that end, I'll plot the plant water requirement on top of the rainfall data. So first, high water plants. High water plants in Union City, California require 33 inches of water a year. So we can see that of these 22 years, only in 2 of those years would rainfall alone have supported high water plants. Now we go with moderate water plants. And here, moderate water plants, 1, 2, 3, 4 of the years out of 22 years, the rainfall alone would have supported moderate water plants. And now low water plants. So you can see why I titled this slide, California is a low water state. If you were to go anywhere in California and you visit the open natural spaces, the regional, state, or federal park in California, you will see low water plants. That's California, unless they are in the understory of a forest or in a riparian area with near a seasonal creek or year-round creek or river, then that's low water plants in California. So I'm going to click this one more time, and we can see now it says low water / mulch. And this is based on a study done at Texas A&M University that found that a planted area with 1 inch of mulch spread over the planted area requires 25% less water. So we can see very clearly that even in these years where we had very little rainfall, under 10 inches of rainfall. And by the way, Contra Costa County, well, actually Richmond, I live in Richmond, I'll just quote that. Richmond, the average rainfall is supposed to be 25 inches a year. So even in these years where it was under 10 inches of rainfall, we can see that low water plants would have been, will have been supported. Now, this one, again, this is like the previous one, only this is a span of 12 months instead of 22 years. And what I like to point out about this one, I think this is really interesting because now we're talking about on a monthly basis, so real time. And these are historical rainfall totals here. What I like to do is start with October because the water year starts on October 1st and ends the following year on September 30th. So when we look at this, we can see that the high water and moderate water plants are only supported by rainfall November, December, January, February, and March. So only 5 months out of the year are high and moderate water plants supported by rainfall. And then going to the low water plants, we have October, November, December, January, February, March, April, and half of May. So for 7.5 months, enough water falls from the sky to support low water plants. So the challenge here is that we have excessive rainfall during the months that the plants don't need very much water. So the challenge is, how do we hold on to that water so that we can have that water during the dry season when we get little or no rainfall? How do we hold on to that water? Well, if you want to store water, you find a container. In this case, I've got a jar. I fill it up with water and I put a lid on it. You find a container and you put a lid on it. Well, my friends, mulch is the lid on the landscape. Mulch is the lid on the landscape. And the reason it's the lid on the landscape is because it reduces the amount of water that can escape from the soil. The plant water requirement, remember I said that it's measured in inches, that plant water requirement is made up mostly of replacing the water that has evaporated from the soil. So the water leaves the soil and then we need to replace it. Okay, and mulch also, it creates a barrier or a lid that reduces the amount of water that can leave the soil. So this is why mulch is the lid of the landscape. Now, with this slide and the following one, I would like to go through a whole bunch of benefits of mulch, and I'm going to go through them fairly quickly. And mulch is such a magical thing. It holds moisture in the soil. It feeds the biological life of the soil. It regulates soil temperature. It suppresses soil-borne diseases. It reduces weeds. It contributes to the sequestering of carbon. It invigorates failing plant material. And it mends and stores compacted and hydrophobic soils. And we've got another one here. It minimizes the need for fertilizer. It improves stormwater retention. It harvests and stores rainwater. It improves soil structure, prevents erosion, promotes more and stronger plant roots, and it builds community. I'll show you what I mean in this next slide. Now, you're probably wondering, what kind of mulch is best? The absolute best kind of mulch that you could use in your landscape is freshly chipped tree and shrub trimmings. So we often call these arbor chips. And you look at the photo on the left here. If the mulch came from that kind of situation, so maybe a tree company comes and does a does pruning or cuts a tree down for whatever reason, and they bring the chipper along and they feed everything into the chipper and it gets blown into the back of the truck. That is gold, my friends. That is gold. Don't let them haul that away. Tell them to leave it. And in fact, we have in the right photo, this is a gal on YouTube who has taken a truckload of mulch. And you can get this stuff for free. You don't even have to pay for it. And when you get a truckload of this, you order a truckload and it comes for free, it's going to be a lot of mulch, most likely. And you can get it for free because the tree companies have to pay to dump this stuff. So if you say, "Hey, put that over in my driveway or in front of my house or whatever," they're very happy to do that. So if you put this stuff in your landscape, you will turn your landscape into a compost factory because mulch becomes compost over time. We like to say that mulch breaks down. Well, it doesn't really truly break down. It gets consumed by the micro and macro organisms in the soil. So mulch becomes compost over time. And most of those benefits that I told you about in the two previous slides, those are the most of those benefits are the result of the action of the biological life in the soil, the micro and macro organisms. So one thing that these I said earlier that mulch can be a community builder. Well, if you get one of these boatloads of mulch in your driveway, invite your neighbors to share it with you. It's a community builder. We have folks around the corner who like to get lots of mulch. They keep mulch really heavy in their backyard. And so they always have a big pile of mulch in the driveway, and we just email them and say, "Hey, can we come over and some more wheelbarrows of mulch?" And say, "Yeah, sure." And I don't know how many other neighbors partake of that, but I suspect at least a few. So it can be a community builder as well. Let's see. Yeah, that's good for that. Now, this one is titled Net Zero Water Landscapes Are Possible. So what one of the things about this talk, a main topic around this talk around climate change is to wean ourselves away from our dependence on the potable water supply. And so we're looking to partake of the free water that falls from the sky, low water plants. And by the way, this demonstration garden that we master gardeners, Contra Costa County master gardeners have we call it the Richmond Low Water Demonstration Garden. This is where we demonstrate that concept of net zero water landscapes. It's low water plants, and there is a layer on the whole garden of about 3 or 4 inches of mulch. And when we first took over this garden in 2018, it was basically a weed patch, and the irrigation was defunct, really. So we spent the first couple of years pulling the weeds and pulling out some of the old plants and um, redoing the irrigation system. So during those 2 years, we did not irrigate anything, and there were a lot of existing plants on the site, low water plants, and they did just fine. They existed solely off of rainfall for the first 2 years that we took over the garden. So the garden itself proved it to us that net zero water landscapes are possible. And if you come to this garden in the Richmond Civic Center on Fridays, we have a crew there that's working on Fridays between 9 a.m. and 1 p.m. If you come by, then Brian or Dan or another master gardener could show you around. It's really beautiful, really beautiful. And speaking of subsisting on rainfall alone, this is another demonstration garden that we master gardeners in Contra Costa County have. And we call it the Water Conservation Garden, and it's in the El Cerrito Hills. And on this site, there is no piped in water nor electricity. So we have built an infrastructure that only works off of rainwater. And you can see here that they're building some raised beds. And what we did was we put reservoirs, sub irrigation or subsurface irrigation or reservoirs into these raised beds. And in 2024, we started this in 2022, and then keep track of all of the water that is used in these beds. And in 2024, the rainfall filled up the reservoirs of these beds, and almost 90% of the water for growing the veggies in these beds, um, 90% of the water for growing veggies for the whole dry season. That the water that fell from the sky took care of 90% of that. In mid-August, they actually put about 40 gallons more into the reservoirs, and that took them all the way through the dry season. So the reservoirs themselves were filled by the winter and spring rains, and that lasted to the middle of August. So cisterns, tanks, barrels, sub-irrigated planters, and solar pump are the components that we use here to grow veggies in 4x8 raised beds, a native pollinator garden, and 5,000 plants for the great tomato plant sale in the spring also. Completely independent of the public potable water supply. So here truly we are practicing the net water, zero net water landscape. So this is really exciting, and we want to shout it to from the mountaintops. And we have a work day on the second Saturday of every month, and the public is definitely welcome to come and join us on our work days, and we can explain to you how these beds are set up. And on the fourth Saturday of the month, we also have a speaker series as well. And this is those 4 raised beds last week. I mean, last month I took a photo of the plants in those beds. All right. So this is the part where I will give you a list of strategies or methods that you can use to make the water stretch during times when there is during drought. Okay. The first strategy or method is to water all the plants in your landscape as if they were low water plants. Now, most of the landscapes that I see out there in the world, most of them have mixed water use plants in them, just like this one. So this was my mother's front garden area. And when I planted this garden for her, I wasn't a water conserving landscape professional. I was a pretty plant landscape professional. So I didn't set this up all that efficiently. So there are low and moderate water plants mixed in here. So the strategy is to just go ahead and set up the irrigation schedule as if all of these plants were low water plants, and then just give extra water to the plants that complain the most. Now you might be asking, how do I know what a low water plant schedule is? How many minutes do I run an irrigation zone for a low water plant schedule? Well, nobody knows this off the top of their head. We're all out there guessing how many minutes to run that the irrigation system need to run. We're all just flying by the seat of our pants. So even landscape professionals, they're just it's like we're making educated guesses. We're not creating accurate irrigation schedules. So if you want to create an accurate irrigation schedule, this is a good way to do that. Now, there are a few irrigation scheduling calculators that are out there. This is a good one, and it's called the Valley Water Scheduler, and it covers all of California. And what you do is you put in your address, and then you put in the data for each of your zones. And so then you can say to it, zone one, low water plants, zone two, low water plants, zone three, low water plants. So it just walks you through the data for each zone, and then it will create for you a custom irrigation schedule that you can then program into your controller. Or is it time for a smart controller? A new smart controller. I just love, love, love smart controllers. I've been installing these since around 2008, I think, and I've installed about 55 of these. And I still manage a lot, well, several of them that I installed like 15 years ago. And because smart controllers, most of them, you can manage them remotely. So I just bring it up on my desktop computer in my office and I check up on these controllers that are out there in people's yards, just to make sure that everything's good and everything's going well. So when have installed these, I've found that there is instant, really incredible water savings because oh, actually, let me go to this next one and tell you what a smart controller is. What the heck is it? It's an irrigation controller that self-adjusts every day based on real-time weather. Okay. And it's like a thermostat, only it controls water instead of heat and air conditioning. So smart controllers are just, they absolutely rock because they create a new schedule every day based on real-time weather. So they're not winging it, they're not flying by the seat of their pants, they're just creating accurate irrigation schedules every day based on the weather. And they won't water after it has rained. They also, most of them now, the latest ones look forward into the forecast to see what's coming, what kind of weather is coming. So they are such powerful tools. And the prices on them have come way, way down because there are a ton of these on the market. So they're priced well, and any project that I become involved in, I make sure that they get a smart controller because is no reason now not to have smart controllers. Okay. Another method or strategy that you can use for drought is to change out your inefficient sprinklers and put in efficient sprinklers. And so in this slide, we have the bottom row is inefficient sprinklers and the top row is efficient ones. Now, what makes the bottom row inefficient is that two of the three, the one on the left, the fixed spray and the brass sprinkler, Both of these apply water so at such a high, fast rate. They're just like blasting the soil like a fire hose. And the water doesn't have a prayer of infiltrating into the soil. So they blast that water so hard that it just ends up running off and not doing any good. So it's really best to get rid of these guys. And what makes it really easy is that if you have this kind here, the fixed spray sprinkler, you can retrofit these efficient nozzles into your old fixed spray sprinkler. If you can just grab this top nozzle, like this red part of this, and unscrew it and pull it out, you can screw in the new efficient nozzles. And I recommend that you go to a local professional irrigation store and maybe take pictures of the sprinkler, the type of sprinklers that you have, and they'll be able to tell you um, uh, they'll be able to tell you which nozzles that you can use to retrofit into your sprinklers. Another strategy is to hand water parts of the garden. Now, some of you may already hand water your garden or your landscape. And I'd like to tell you how to hand water areas accurately, to do it accurately. Now, if you have irrigation system and you don't hand water anything, what I suggest is that you just find an area where you can go ahead and turn off the irrigation in one irrigation zone, but you need to answer two questions if you want to accurately apply the exact amount of water those plants need. The first question is, how much water do these plants need? And the second question is, how much water is coming out of this nozzle when I'm standing there shooting the water onto the plants with the nozzle? So the answer to the first question is there is an app in the resource handout. There's an app that will tell you exactly how many gallons of water any plant needs in any incorporated city in California. So that is how you answer the first question. How much water do these plants need? And it not only will tell you individual plants, but it will also tell you areas. Like say you have a veggie bed that's a 4 by 8 veggie bed, then you would say 32 square feet. Okay. So that's the first question. And then the second question, how much water is coming out of these nozzles? At what rate is the water coming out of these nozzles? They have flow meters. You could get a hose end flow meter. And these things have literally flooded the market in the past 6 to 8 years, pun intended. And there are a ton of these guys on the market, and they will tell you how many gallons you're dispensing when you put water through the nozzle. Now, in the absence of having a hose end flow meter, what you could do is measure the rate the water comes out of your nozzle using a bucket. So what you do is you flow water into the bucket for exactly 60 seconds. Then you measure the amount of water, and then this will tell you how many gallons per minute your spray nozzle applies water. So for instance, say you planted a tree in the parking strip last year and you find out, you look up how much water it requires, and you find out that it requires 15 gallons a week. And you do this test and you find out that your nozzle dispenses water at a rate of 5 gallons a minute. Well, then you know that you need to stand there and water that tree for 3 minutes a week. So that's how it works. Now, in the way of measuring the amount of water that you flowed into this 5 gallon bucket, I recommend not using the 5 gallon bucket to measure it, because these things that we call 5 gallon buckets are not 5 gallons. They're 6.2 gallons. So I would use something that has a more reliable measurement to it. Another strategy to manage your landscape drought is to use water that is recovered from the house. So that warm up water. And usually when I ask groups of people how they conserve water, a lot of people do this. And this is really wonderful. If you have to run, we have to run our shower and our kitchen sink for a full minute before we get hot water. And so we catch it. We catch that water and then we take it outside to the far side of the driveway and water plants that don't have irrigation on them. So this is a really good strategy to use, and I know a lot of people use this strategy. Another strategy or method is to put in a gray water system. Now, you do not need a permit in California to put in a laundry to landscape gray water system. And that means that you send your washing machine water out to the landscape. And it's really good to use that for trees and shrubs and maybe perennial plants. You just don't want to be putting it, having it come in contact with veggies and herbs, anything that you eat. But it's fairly easy to do. And there are websites and YouTube videos. I attended a hands-on workshop one time where we went to somebody's house and a big group of us just converted that, put in this gray water system. And it was actually pretty easy and straightforward. I really felt like I could do it after that. This is a great way because we generate so much water with our washing machine that it just seems such a shame to just send it to the wastewater plant. All right. Now, I would like to suggest a different way of thinking about our sources of water. The standard is just to turn on the tap, turn on the tap, turn on the tap, turn on the hose, turn on the faucet. But our potable water supply won't always be available for that option. When we're in deep drought, one of the first things to go is the landscape water because it's deemed as being not essential. But if we can wean our landscapes off of their dependence on potable water, then if and when that happens, our landscapes won't be phased at all. So here's the order of preference that I'd like to suggest for considering sources of water. Number one, rainwater, passively captured by the landscape itself, or maybe you create sub-irrigated planters, like those planters we have at the Water Conservation Garden, or barrels, tanks, and cisterns. Number two, recovered water. Recovered water from the house, repurposed water, put in a gray water system, or recycled water from the water purveyor, sanitary district, or the city. And then, as a last resort, potable water rather than a first resort, either piped in from the public water supply or from a well on the property. Okay, so I have just 3 slides on wildfire. Then this will be brief but important. This graphic shows a property that's fully at risk for wildfire entering the landscape, swiftly moving toward the house and igniting it. And this one shows the same property with the risk factors removed. This diagram is just to present zones 0, 1, and 2, seeing their distances from the house and seeing how the vegetation is clean and well maintained. And we have the use of islands as plantings, and the trees are limbed up and don't have vegetation beneath that would ignite the canopies. Now notice zone 0. which is the immediate area within 5 feet of your home. You create a non-flammable apron clear of anything that can burn. Okay. Now, we are excited in Contra Costa County Master Gardeners. We have a Firewise demonstration garden coming soon to our county. And the construction launches in September of this year. It is a three-way partnership between the UC Master Gardeners, West West Contra Costa Fire Safe Council, and the Richmond Fire Department. And this will take place over on at Richmond Fire Station number 63 on Valley View Road in El Sobrante Valley. And it's funny that I asked Marilyn to provide a photo of the site for me, and she's one of the main people working on this project. And she sent me a site of, oh, it's been raining and look how the water is collecting here. So it's right up the alley of what we're talking about here. And then they haven't done any work on this site yet, but clearly something, we already have the site collecting rainwater. So it's going to be really fun to see what ends up happening on this site, how the landscape gets shaped and sculpted to to better hold on to the water. So now this section is about too much water showing up in the form of atmospheric rivers. You'll see that I suggest ways to try and hold on to that water as much as possible. The last 3 winters, we experienced heavy rainfall from several winter storms that triggered significant flooding and related hazards. As I showed you earlier in the drought section, in the first 22 years in this century, we were in drought 77% of the time. But the 3 winters after that saw a wild swing in the other direction. So let's see what actions we can take to minimize the impact of these atmospheric rivers. In this section, we're dealing with too much water on your property and in your landscape. This suggests drainage issues on the light side and more serious issues of flooding, landslides, and uprooted mature trees. So many of these issues and challenges are beyond our control, even as do-it-yourselfers. So I'll be suggesting actions that you can take to make a difference in how your landscape receives and deals with excessive rain. For more serious challenges, it's best that you seek the help of professional arborists, engineers, contractors, and such. Trees are much more likely to blow over in high winds if they're not pruned and thinned regularly. Use arborists for maintaining the canopies of large trees so they'll be less likely to end up like this. Green filter or gray funnel? You choose. The historically used system for conveying stormwater with pipes, catch basins, curbs, gutters, channels, storm drains, and other human-made impervious materials, it doesn't allow for infiltration or the use of natural systems such as soil or plants. These days, we're moving towards green stormwater infrastructure, so the one on the left. While gray stormwater infrastructure is designed to move urban water away from the built environment, green stormwater infrastructure reduces loads on the local creeks and treats stormwater at its source, avoiding catastrophic consequences of an overwhelmed gray funnel system. Now, the storm drains that we have out on our at the curb or of the street, those storm drains deliver water directly into local creeks, the bay, the delta. And that water is unfiltered and untreated. So we have to be really careful. about what ends up going down the stormwater drain. So we really want to try to keep the water that falls on the property in rainfall, we want as much as possible to stay on the property. The home gardener should try to slow down the flow of water into the storm drain system. We need to reduce peak flow in our creeks. Diverting water from roofs and landscapes and rain gardens and through dry creek beds are ways of doing that. In the case of the landslide in this photo, there were multiple causes. Very high peak flows, which undercut steep banks of the creeks and completely saturated soil. And then the high winds come along and they blew down old trees and it caused further erosion. So this was caused in large part by the overwhelm of the storm drain system or that gray funnel system. Now, following are some of the actions that we can take to lessen the impact of these atmospheric rivers. Right? Now, this is actually from the Ah, the thing that I was talking about earlier, which is the California Watershed Approach to Landscape Design, the publication I was talking about earlier. This is all over the state. Several cities have put it out, and water districts have put it out also. And it's all pretty much the same publication, sponsored by different cities and water districts around California. And it is excellent, excellent. The Green Gardens group in Southern California created this, and it is really amazing with lots of wonderful, wonderful eye candy, beautiful gardens. And this is the one that people, and it's a free publication. This is the one that people can consult on how to do the low water garden. In this section, we talk about using landforms to passively capture and store the rain. We can emulate the natural watershed systems by turning our individual properties into mini watersheds, where the water that falls on the roof is channeled out into the living soil sponge landscape where landforms have been created to slow the water down, spread it out, sink it down, and store it for later use. There are various landforms that can be easily built to slow that water down, spread it out, sink it, and store it. Rain gardens are one of these landforms, and this is a cross section of a rain garden. Berms, we have berms, bioswales, and dry creek beds are a few more. This is a project that I helped out with in Rancho Cordova several years ago. And you can see these landforms are pretty gentle. So they gently shaped the land, and then you can see down here how they are too in the dry creek bed here. And then after it rained, this is the same site. And while they were working on this project, it rained one night, came back the next day, and woo, it's working. The rain garden, the dry creek bed, it was just really fantastic to see this actually working where the water would collect and sink down slowly into the water table below. And here is a fully functional rain garden that efficiently handles those atmospheric rivers. This is the garden of one of our master gardeners, Martha Lee. And oh man, it is so stunning. This is stunning and functional at the same time. I want this garden. And here are several examples of dry stream beds that serve to spread the water out, slow it down, spread it out, sink it down, and store it. Yeah, dry creek beds are really popular these days. And of course, we have cisterns, tanks, and barrels. And there's a fun one. All right. Okay. And lastly, pervious pavement can infiltrate, treat, and or store rainwater where it falls. They can be made of pervious concrete, porous asphalt, permeable interlocking pavers, or other materials. And here we have examples of pervious pavement that can help catch and store rainwater in the ground. So just turning impervious into pervious. So catching that water, the water that falls on the site, we want to try to keep it on the site and use it all through the dry season if possible. All right, here we go. So we've covered a lot of ground here. And I hope I've given you many actions that you see as doable and valuable for preparing your landscape for dealing with the challenges that climate change sends our way. And I wish you all the best in being better prepared. And I hope you have fun doing it.